recording is again in progress. So I would ask the next speaker, who is Nikhil Kalyanapuram, to share the screen. Nikhil will tell us about two-dimensional models for soft theorems. I can see the slides. So as before, Nikhil, you have 25 minutes, allowing for 5 minutes for questions. But I'm afraid the same thing that was happening before happened now also. So when you tried to go full screen, it didn't work.
Are you able to?
Now it's okay. Yes, okay. Now it's perfect. Thank you. Go ahead.
Can everyone hear me well?
Yeah, I can both hear and see.
Okay, thanks. So I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to be here. So I'd like to, maybe talk for 25 minutes, and then if you can stop me, we can then move on to questions. So the main part of this presentation is based on the first reference that I've listed here. And the main ideas that I'd like to push today are two-dimensional models, which I believe, and I'll give evidence to support this, are equivalent to are dynamically equivalent to the soft sectors in QED and gravity, so long as we stick to the leading order in the soft expansion. So there are a number of upshots to this approach to thinking about the problem, and that's what I'd like to largely talk about. Namely that there are a number of global symmetries enjoyed by these models, which lead to consequences in 4 dimensions. And in addition, there are some interesting structures such as double copy structures and interpretations of the asymptotic symmetries that I think are made manifest by these 2-dimensional models. So I'll start with a brief introduction about the motivations involved. The main question that I wanted to answer was to make some progress towards finding a true representation of one example of a theory that gave rise to flat space holography. And massless scattering seemed to be a particularly good way of doing this because mainly of massless kinematics. So long as we stick to particles that are scattering which have 0 mass, the momenta, other than the energy, really depend on 2 degrees of freedom, and namely the punctures of the particle when we view them on the celestial sphere. And of course, the natural arena for all of this is null infinity, because we know, due to the work of people like Penrose, even back in the 60s, that null infinity is very rich, and they encode information about dynamics in the bulk naturally in terms of radiative data that's stored at null infinity. Now, while doing all of this for the full theories would be very interesting, the problem is considerably simplified if we look specifically at the soft sectors, and that's what I'll be doing for the rest of the talk. So let me just review what the soft theorems are. The soft theorems are simply statements about scattering amplitudes, about what happens to them when one external particle, one external massless quantum is taken to have arbitrarily low energy. And the soft theorems simply tell us that the scattering amplitude factors into 2 parts, namely the scattering amplitude that's independent of the soft emission, and an overall factor that contains a very specific analytic structure. And I've given these 2 functions for the case of positive helicity radiation in QED and gravity. Now, 2 things immediately strike one when we observe these 2 functions, namely that first, they seem to largely depend only on the punctures of these external states on the celestial sphere, and they have a very specific singularity structure. For example, in gravity, it's very clear that there are no collinear divergences of leading order because the overall function is it's not divergent if we look at the collinear limit. And the hope is that from these functions we can really derive 2-dimensional models that can recover these without having any recourse to the full 4-dimensional bulk dynamics of the theories. The way that I think is best to go about this is to learn from the Ward identities that we already know to be equivalent to the soft theorems in QED and gravity at leading order. We know from studies recently that soft theorems in QED and gravity are simply equivalent to the statements that there are charges given on the slide, which commute to the S matrix for any choice of the smearing functions epsilon and sigma. In fact, for specific choices of these functions, we recover precisely the soft theorems of QED and gravity at leading order. In particular, they admit a simple split into soft components and hard components, depending on how the effects on external states are when we act on them. Now, the strategy for finding these two-dimensional models rests really on looking at these charges and then asking ourselves, what are the two-dimensional models that enjoy the same symmetries as these charges do? And this, of course, stems from the simple observation that these charges themselves really only depend on the external positions of the particles, which is how they act on external states. And consequently, it's not unreasonable to expect that any two-dimensional model that would give rise to the soft theorems enjoy the same symmetries as these charges. Of course, it turns out the simplest way of doing this is to look at the soft charge and ask what are the symmetries enjoyed by the soft charges. And in the case of the soft charge, it's left invariant by performing shifts which obey these two equations. And of course, there's a unique solution for these, namely that f is some constant, which can be any C number. Now our task is to look for an action that has the same symmetry as, which has the same symmetry, namely that it's invariant under a global shift. Asking this answering this is not complicated. The action is largely unique, and it's just a single free boson in 2 dimensions. Now, this action is interesting for one because it's a conformal field theory. So a number of things such as a 2-point function are uniquely fixed. And the first main result is that this action is dynamically equivalent to the soft sector at leading order in QED. So doing this really consists of 2 steps, and proving this consists of 2 steps. The first is generalizing the dressing due to Faddeev and Kulish to accommodate this 2-dimensional model rather than make reference to the 4-dimensional dynamics, and then extracting the soft theorem as a consequence of the symmetry of this model. So one assumption that I'm going to make henceforth is that the hard scattering amplitude admits some kind of holographic dual. What I mean by this is that for every external hard state, there's an operator that I've denoted by Mathcal OI, and these hard states are created by these operators via some kind of mechanism, such as some kind of state operator correspondence or a Mellin transform or something of the sort. This is an assumption, so I won't spend more time on this. The idea is now that each of these operators is dressed by an exponential operator, as given here. And people who see this will notice that these are simply conformal primaries for the 2-dimensional model that in the case of QED. And of course, these conformal primaries obey a well-known operator product expansion. But more interestingly, the soft theorem now turns out to be equivalent to the void identity of the current that comes from the global symmetry, namely the shift symmetry. Of course, there are two currents corresponding to anti-holomorphic and holomorphic derivatives. This leads, as you can see from this equation, to the leading order soft theorem for the radiation of a positive helicity soft photon. Of course, replacing this with this complex conjugate leads to the corresponding result for the radiation of a negative helicity soft photon. So the point here is that we had a 2-dimensional symmetry at the level of the 2D model, namely the shift symmetry, and that turns out to be equivalent to the 4-dimensional soft theorem. So this is a sense in which this model is dynamically equivalent to the soft sector in QED at leading order. Now, for those, I'm sure several people have already guessed by this point, the correlation function of these dressing operators is actually equivalent up to a factor inside the exponential to the so-called soft S matrix in QED, which is obtained by Eichhorn exponentiation. So indeed, you get both components. You get the virtual corrections that come from the Eichhorn expansion, as well as the actual soft theorem correspond to real emissions is simply from OPEs that are fixed by the two-dimensional model itself. So if we move on to gravity, an entirely analogous story plays out. Specifically, this time the soft charges are invariant or symmetric under shifts by functions f that obey the two equations that are given over here. So the solution to this is not as straightforward as it is in the case of QED, but anyone can check that any such function is parameterized by four constants, which can be complex numbers, generally speaking. And the function itself is local. It depends on positions on the celestial sphere. Of course, we can ask ourselves what's the simplest action that's invariant under these symmetries, and that is the action given over here. This action is simply a theory of one scalar field that obeys the biharmonic equation on the celestial sphere. And of course, the Noether charges for this can be inferred by simply looking at these. And they are the second derivatives of the field sigma, again corresponding to positive and negative heliocentric graviton emission, as we can see. This time, the dressing is generalized by instead replacing the charges EI with the energies of the external particles. And of course, replacing the field epsilon with the field sigma and its attendant operator product expansion. In particular, we have this operator product expansion, which as we see has the precise analytic structure that we need in order to recover the soft graviton theorem. And of course, by a single insertion, a single instance of this field, of this current, we can see that the corresponding OPE gives us precisely the soft factor times the product of these external states. Of course, assuming again that the correlation function of these external operators gives you the hard amplitude. Again, by simply looking at the OPE satisfied by two sigmas, one can verify that the correlation function of these dressing operators corresponds to the softness matrix in gravity, again obtained by the Eichhorn expansion, which correspond to virtual transitions between the external states. So again, this two-dimensional model encodes the virtual and real contributions to any soft divergences at leading order. So it's perhaps helpful to spend a brief moment to explain why I think these global symmetries are interesting. Soft theorems give us certain facts about scattering amplitudes that we wouldn't normally expect to come out of low energy statements. Specifically, as Weinberg showed us back in 1964, the soft theorem in the case of QED is actually equivalent to the statement of global electric charge being conserved. This, of course, is a consequence of gauge invariance by shifting the polarization vector by the momentum of the soft particle. We can see that global charge has to be conserved in the case of any scattering amplitude directly from the soft theorem as well. And now with the two-dimensional model that we have on hand, we can ask ourselves if this is possible in the case of these two-dimensional models as well. And this indeed turns out to be the case. So the upshot of all of this is that the consistency condition is imposed directly on account of the global symmetry of the 2D model. So if we shift the field epsilon by an overall constant, we can see that the product of all of these dual operators that generate the scattering amplitude is shifted by a global phase that corresponds to sum over all the external charges. Now, we have to take recourse to the fact that ultimately we're interested in the correlation function of the dressing operators. And for this correlation function to be single valued, we require that this phase, that the phase has to vanish or has to be equal to some product of 2 pi. The choice really doesn't matter, because if it's equal to some product of 2 pi, it really corresponds to a global denormalization of the charges. Ultimately, what this simply tells us is that global charge is conserved for any scattering amplitude. And an entirely similar structure is true for gravity as well. Specifically, if we shift the field sigma by these 4 parameters, it gives us the phase as given here. So this, when expanded in this form, each of these components actually labels the component of the external momenta of the particle after performing 90-degree shifts between the t and z axes and the x and y axes. So the statement simply tells us that momentum is conserved globally throughout in the scattering process. One alternative way of viewing this is that if each of the kappas were chosen independently, that is, each of the kappas flanking the omega, if they were a generic kappa I, then they would result in a set of constraints, specifically in a set of 4 constraints, that would be incompatible with global momentum conservation unless all the kappas were chosen to be equivalent to each other. So this is simply a restatement of Weinberg's 1964 theorem, which is that every particle has to couple to gravity with exactly the same strength, which is simply the equivalence principle. So one of the interesting structures that shows up in all of this is a form of a double copy. So to just to recall, what the idea behind the double copy is that if we have observables in a theory having global gauge invariance, such as a Yang-Mills theory or QED, and we have a theory of gravity with another set of observables, then on occasion, observables in one theory are related to observables in the other theory by replacing color factors by kinematic factors. So one example of this, of course, is if we're looking at integrands in a scattering amplitude at L loops, then the numerators in the case of gravity can be obtained from the numerators in the case of the gauge theory by replacing the color factors with kinematic factors, so long as the kinematic factors enjoy the same Jacobi identities as the color factors do. And this is often stated schematically as gravity is equal to the square of gauge theory for observables. The interesting thing is that even for the two-dimensional models dual to the soft sectors, we have similar double copy structures that show up. The first double copy structure that's most evident is that the derivatives with respect to the positions of a celestial sphere are simply related by a squaring operation. So the action in the case of gravity is obtained by squaring the derivative operators throughout in the case of QED. But we also see some kind of indication of a global color kinematics duality, because the dressing operators are then obtained by replacing the charges present in the dressing operators with the energies present in the dressing operators. I'd just like to state parenthetically here that I have a suspicion that all of this essentially descends from the classical actions for these two different theories. And I believe that if we are able to derive these actions by looking at the boundary dynamics of conventional QED and conventional Einstein gravity, then these double copies will simply be the infrared limits of the more generic double copy that we see at tree level between gauge theory and gravity scattering amplitudes. Of course, I mean, this is just a hunch, so I'll be interested if somebody has more thoughts on this. So one of the, I thought, more interesting things to come out of these two-dimensional models was the fact that asymptotic symmetries showed up in a more natural fashion by representing themselves in terms of these external, in terms of these two-dimensional fields. So looking first at the QED case, the exponential dressings that depend on the field epsilon really correspond to large gauge transformations. Now, we know that the ward identities correspond to large gauge transformations are the ones that are equivalent to the Cox theorems. And here we can see that these really are large gauge transformations because of the fact that epsilon satisfies the harmonic equation on the sphere in the classical sense. So if we look at classical configurations of this field, and we know that any such field can be expanded as a sum of a holomorphic and anti-holomorphic function. And since these two functions can be arbitrary, epsilon in general is angle dependent on this field. And each classical configuration thus corresponds to a separate large gauge transformation. So in some sense, it's by averaging over these large gauge transformations that we obtain the virtual contribution to the soft theorem. Now, to understand this in the case of gravity, it's a little easier to move from the conventional momentum space representation to the Mellin space representation, which is in the boost eigenbasis. In particular, we have to use a specific modified form of the Mellin transform, which also depends on these UI factors, which really correspond to retarded coordinates on null infinity. Now, when we move into this basis, we can see that the dressing really has the effect of shifting this, shifting the coordinate UI by the field sigma that depends on the coordinates of the external particle in question. Now, the field sigma, unlike the case of the field epsilon, depends on the biharmonic equation. So it doesn't admit a natural split in terms of holomorphic and anti-holomorphic pieces, but it can be expanded in the basis given here, where n can typically be any integer. And in terms of the celestial presentation of supertranslations, these are just the first two families of supertranslation generators when viewed in stereographic coordinates. And of course, since this is a basis, it can be expanded in terms of an infinite set of complex numbers. And so this shift along UI really corresponds to some arbitrary supertranslation along null infinity. And once again, it's by averaging over all of these supertranslations that we obtain the virtual contribution to coming from soft corrections in the case of gravity. So we really see that asymptotic symmetries are encoded in the dynamics of these two-dimensional fields without having to actually find the generators of these symmetries from any kind of four-dimensional representation of the fields. So there are a number of questions beyond leading order that I think are very interesting. We know for a fact that the soft expansion doesn't really stop at leading order, and there are an infinite series of corrections to the soft expansion. The most interesting of these in gauge theory and gravity are still subleading order, that is at constant order in omega in the case of gauge theory, and at first order in omega in gravity, that is unto sub-leading order. And it turns out that the soft theorems in these theories are also generated by a set of two-dimensional models, but these two-dimensional models really just generalize the two-dimensional models that are given in this presentation. Specifically, the higher order in derivatives, and one has to make certain corrections to the dressing operators, which actually turn out to be dual to the action of the hard part of the corresponding charges when acted upon some external state. So there's a nice map that one can develop between these. A question that I think has been largely not looked at, which I would find especially interesting, is that these higher dimensional models have larger symmetry groups. So they're invariant under more complicated shifts of the external fields. And I believe that these really correspond to more complicated angle-dependent analogs of the conservation of charge and momentum, or perhaps the conservation of dipole charge in QED, or the conservation of higher multiples in gravity. And I think looking at these would be interesting in the context of these two-dimensional models. Of course, two questions which I have not attempted to answer so far, which are of immediate interest, is first extending these to include the effects of massive particles. And since we know that massive particle loops give rise to more interesting soft theorems once we perform loop corrections, those I think would also be very interesting, especially in light of the fact that I suspect they would sort of shift the dressing operators in some particular fashion. So it looks like I'm finishing early. So that's it. Anybody has any questions?
You are actually right on time, Nikhil.
Oh,
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for the nice and clear talk. And we have a few minutes for questions. Which I think I might use to squeeze in, and not so much a question as a comment. I'm sure you know Nikhil, we discussed it, that many of the things that that you said have a non-abelian generalization. So they still apply to non-abelian gauge theories, and I think that in part this provides a piece of the answer to your last question about the generalization to loop corrections, because in the context of QED, loop corrections in some sense are trivial, because the exponentiation is just the exponentiation of the one-loop result, which of course this theory gets right, which is interesting. But in non-abelian gauge theories, the loop corrections are highly non-trivial, but the correspondence survives, and what factors out is just a well-known anomalous dimension that has been computed to high orders in the non-abelian case. But as I said, we discussed this. Actually, I do see some questions now. One is from Andrea. Please, Andrea.
Yeah, this is maybe more of a comment. I think on one of the slides you had a question about the squaring of these differential of these partial derivatives in Z for the spin 1 and the spin 2 case. And I think this is in a sense can be understood from representation theory in 2D CFT, because the soft operators that show up in the soft charges for QED and for gravity, they are level 1, respectively level 1 and level 2 primary descendants. And so they come with partial derivatives of 1 and 2 powers. And I think this is, from the celestial CFT perspective, explains this particular squaring here.
Right. The point I wanted to make in this slide was, I would like to see how this comes out of the 4-dimensional theories, not specifically in terms of the 2D CFTs. Because if these models are really not special, and that they're really descendants of the bulk theories, which I suspect that they are, then the squaring operation would be nothing. I mean, it wouldn't be anything surprising or anything special, because they would come out of kinematic squaring even at the level of the 4-dimensional theories. And I mean, that's a calculation that I think would be very interesting if someone has done it or plans to do it.
Okay. Please, Simon, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the nice talk. Yeah. My question is about your comment on that a certain vanishing phase was related to momentum conservation in the gravity case.
This slide?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I want to understand what exactly is the claim like. So okay, the phase vanish when momentum is conserved, but does it mean that is there a mechanism in this Ghost-on-Boson theory that forced the phase to vanish and that impose momentum conservation, or what exactly is that? Does that just mean that physically the phase is always 0, or how should we interpret this statement?
It's just that so it really is the same thing as you would have in a normal Coulomb gas model, in the Coulomb gas theory. So if it's thinking only in terms of the 2D CFT, in any Coulomb gas, we know that there's a global shift symmetry, because the external states and the 2D field, any expectation value involving them would have to be invariant under this shift by some constant. And in the case of the Coulomb gas, if we compute the correlation function of conformal primaries, this is equivalent to the statement that the conformal primary, I mean, the correlation function would be multiplied by the exponential of a phase that was simply the sum over the charges of these, punctures in the Coulomb gas field. And that's the statement of charge neutrality, which any elementary CFT book has that theorem. Say, for example, the
Yeah.
big yellow
Yeah.
book.
Okay. Okay. That's what's. I mean.
Same thing in Java.
Okay. What I want to see is. Okay. In some sense, you get the delta function, right? So you're telling me that this Ghost-Stone CFT produce a momentum conserving delta function. Is that what you're saying me or not?
Oh, no. I'm saying it's only supported on.
Sorry?
I'm saying it's only supported on a configuration of external momenta where the
Okay,
sum of the momenta vanish.
Okay, but we already are. Okay, I see. But the amplitude are already supported on those. So that's just saying
Yeah,
that
so
this is just a consistency check. It's not an alternative derivation of the delta function. It's just a consistency
really
check.
an alternative
Okay.
derivation of momentum conservation. But
Okay.
as I pointed out, if the kappas are all different, then it's sort of it's just another way of saying the result that we already know is true, that all the kappas have to be equivalent to each other. Because
Okay,
both
thanks.
of these conditions can't be seen if the kappas are different. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so at the moment, I don't see other questions or comments. So if there are no other questions or comments, I would like to thank Nikhil for the nice presentation and also thank the other two speakers of this session, and Andrea and Stefan. And I think that we have a break now and we reconvene at this point in 20 minutes at 15:30 Copenhagen time. Thank you, everyone, and see you later.